New Netflix docuseries about Sean Diddy Combs is making headlines for its never-before-seen footage of the music mogul in the days before his arrest. Now, Combs is threatening legal action against the streamer for airing the unauthorized footage. Behind the series is Combs' longtime rap rival 50 Cent and director Alexandria Stapleton, who sat down with NBC News' Chloe Malas ahead of tonight's.
Stop everything. What I'm about to reveal will destroy the official story you've been told for nearly 30 years. Gene Deal just went public with evidence that 50 Cent deliberately left out of his Netflix documentary, evidence involving a $1 million check, ignored warnings, and knowledge of what was coming before Tupac and Biggie were killed. And I'm going to show you exactly why this changes everything. Don't you dare scroll past this. This just cracked the internet wide open, and honestly, I've been waiting for this moment. Gene Deal is back in the spotlight, and this time he's not holding anything back. He's claiming there were major details, massive, game-changing details, quietly left out of 50 Cent's Netflix documentary. Details that don't just fill in gaps, they completely shake up everything people think they know about hip-hop's darkest chapter. According to Gene, he's now speaking publicly about alleged evidence tied to the Tupac Shakur shooting, including paperwork he says never made the final cut, and a deeper backstory around Biggie's death that raised red flags behind the scenes, red flags that people in power chose to ignore. You didn't click this by accident. People are saying Gene Deal is exposing moments that 50 Cent chose not to include, moments too dangerous, too controversial, too close to the truth. And whether you believe it or not, the claims are already sending shockwaves through hip-hop history discussions everywhere. So let's get straight into it. No fluff, no delays, just the full breakdown of what's being alleged right now and why I think this might be the most important testimony we've heard in decades.
Here's where it gets interesting, and where my suspicions started growing. 50 Cent reportedly sold his documentary centered on Sean Diddy Combs to Netflix for serious money. We're talking millions, and expectations were sky high across the entire culture. Everyone assumed Gene Deal would play a key role, since he previously worked closely with Diddy.
I want to put her on blast because she was telling me, she was saying to me that what I was asking for was crazy and they wasn't spending money like that. I'm talking about you got footage, you got clothing, I was doing footage, I had pictures, all the stuff that I had, you could figure out a way to pay her, brother, and stuff like that. And then I was telling her about some prices that I've already received, and I had the invoices to show it. And then she was calling me like I was lying. I'm like, yo, who do you think you talking to? You know what I'm saying? And she was talking about, there's no way nobody paid. Nobody what? I say, first of all you people come with these documentaries and stuff. The first thing you tell me, y'all tell these people out here that y'all don't pay, and y'all pay. If you can make a picture look like $10,000, $15,000, you know what I'm saying? You can sit here and tell me that you're gonna pay me for my time sitting right down here with y'all. You understand? So then, one thing led to another, and I was like, all right, well then, F you, I spoke to 50, and then she said 50, and this is exact words that came out her mouth. 50 does not determine what goes in and goes out of.
And has spent years sharing his version of events tied to Bad Boy's past. But when the documentary dropped, Gene Deal was missing completely. No interviews, no archive clips, no commentary, absolutely nothing at all. And people noticed immediately. The comment sections exploded with one question: where's Gene Deal? Now, Gene is explaining why, and honestly, his explanation makes my blood run cold. He says certain footage, conversations, and documents were allegedly removed before release. Material he believes was too sensitive, too explosive, too legally dangerous for the final edit. And once you hear his side, it becomes crystal clear why producers may have decided to leave it on the cutting room floor.
But here's what really bothers me, and this part flips the whole story on its head, so pay close attention. Before we even touch Gene Deal's leaked material, there's something way bigger people missed, something that screams cover-up to me. This project was allegedly planned as a long, deep
Wolf was not the gunman who killed Jake, and Mark Curry knows that to be true. You understand? And East Coast War was more like Helena Troy. When Puff got mad at Suge for being out there and allowing Misa to come out there to make money, however she was doing it, to feed her family, he vowed down that it's like, yo, I ain't never fucking with her again, and I ain't never fucking with him again. Puff and Suge had a conversation behind the house of of blues about was we all right, and Tupac was alive. Tupac wasn't dead. So if it was a war, Suge ain't having no conversation with Puff about we good. I know he could be doing a Hoboken hustle, trying to fool a brother, but have that killed, and had he killed my man or some shit like that, I wouldn't have no conversation with Puff. I'd been like, yo, you know what y'all niggas done? You know what happened? And it wasn't no conversation like that, brother. It wasn't no conversation whereas that, you know, Suge made Puff feel like I'm gonna get you a payback for what happened to Jake. This was more so that Puff, for whatever reason, Suge, for whatever reason he was mad at Puff, and Puff, for whatever reason he was mad at Suge. It was between them two. It wasn't no whole East Coast wanted the West Coast dead, and the West Coast wanted East Coast to dead, because they still was going out, still chilling, still at places with each other. It was Bad Boy and it was Death Row. It was no East Coast and no West Coast. West Coast dudes were still coming out on the East Coast getting love. East Coast niggas was still going out on the West Coast getting love. It was Bad Boy versus Death Row. And that's what it was, bro. And it was because of the two CEOs. But Suge tried to straighten it out. I gotta get at the Suge. The Death Row East Coast was going to bring in Eric B. It was going to bring in Big D. And those brothers was from the East Coast. So now they was looking for a representative to come to the meeting from Bad Boy so they could straighten out the shit between Pac and Big and Death Row and Bad Boy. And Puff is the one who refused. Puff is the one to refuse to send a representative or either come himself, and got mad at Zip and them because they were in the Mirage on 57th Street partying with Suge Knight. Got mad at them, and Zip hung up the phone on behind that.
But what you mean by Mark Curry? You know who killed Big J?
It was some Jamaican dude from the Bronx. He's dead now. The police ended up killing him at Magic City. I don't know his name, but Mark Curry know that it wasn't Wolf.
But when I was looking at the documentary, Kirk Burroughs, he did confirm that Big, he didn't want to go to LA, and they was actually getting warnings not to go to LA. But you know, Diddy, he wanted to go, man.
My man, yeah, we must have had warnings, man. I didn't know. I knew that we shouldn't be.
Investigative series over 10 episodes. 10 full episodes to dive into everything, to leave no stone unturned, to finally tell the complete truth. But instead, 50 Cent suddenly dropped a 4-part Netflix series titled Diddy, The Reckoning, packed with footage filmed just days before Sean Diddy Combs faced serious legal trouble. We're talking raw behind-the-scenes moments, private lawyer conversations, casual fan interactions in Harlem, and off-camera clips most people never expected to see. On the surface, it looks solid, even polished, even comprehensive. But Gene Deal says the real story was never told. The expectation was simple. This documentary was supposed to dig into everything, every allegation, every questionable move, every cover story, every body, every dollar, every warning ignored. But according to Gene, the most critical details were quietly left out. And that's where things start getting uncomfortable, where the official narrative starts crumbling.
So who is Gene Deal really, and why should anyone believe him? He wasn't just around the Bad Boy circle. He was right there.
About the whole incident of the Quad Studio shit. Like in the documentary, they was talking about that, right? You know what I'm saying? They talked about the Quad Studio shit. But they didn't mention the fact, and they left it out, that Big and C's did not know that Puff and Andre Harrell was in Jimmy Henchman's office the day Pac got killed. I mean, the day Pac got shot at Quad Studio. Let me repeat that again so it don't get mixed up in the whole thing. They did not mention that Andre Harrell and Puff Daddy and Jimmy Henchman were all in the office together. Puff was on the office because he was trying to spy on Big them, because Big was writing the Junior Mafia stuff and Puff had his publishing. I told this to a couple of people before. I said it before, and you got people that's running with it like they knew the story in the whole 9 yards. You understand? They'll lie and you ask them, how do you know that? Who told you? They couldn't even tell you that. They'll tell you some lie, they did some kind of investigation, but it didn't happen like that. You understand? Puff was there to spy on Big because he had owned Big Publishing, and Big had turned around, and the same people who helped Puff get Big Publishing told Big to turn and put Tatiana or put somebody else's name on his publishing, or give it to Lil C's or whoever this, that, and the third that he wrote for, so he can get the money from it. So that's how that went down. So they was there to spy on Big. In the interim of him being there to spy on Big, Jimmy Henchman told them that they finna show Pac, teach Pac a lesson, because Pac had owed him him some money. So that's why he was up in the studio and was coming to the studio. Pac owed him some money. Pac owed him some money. He was going to work it off and get some money from doing a song with Lil Sean. And that's what that was about. But Pac was talking greasy to Jimmy Henchman, and Jimmy Henchman wasn't the type of dude that you talk greasy to, alleged, unless you're 50 Cent.
So Diddy knew what was going to happen to Pac.
He knew Pac was about to deal well. Yeah, he was there to see it. He was there to see it. He wasn't only there to see Big them. When Jimmy Henchman told him that, he was there to see what's going to happen to Pac. He was there for that, because had he not been there for that, he would have went up there in the office. He would have went to the studio or the studio session with Big them. He would have went to that studio session with Big them. He knew what room Big them was in. He didn't do that. He was there to see what was going to happen to Pac after Jimmy told him, and that's factual.
In the room, in the car, on the street, witnessing history as it happened. Gene was Diddy's former bodyguard during the peak bad boy era, present during the East Coast-West Coast tension, in Las Vegas the night Tupac Shakur was shot, and in Los Angeles when Biggie was killed. Gene says he witnessed history unfold in real time, and now he's done holding back. He's done protecting people who never protected the artists. He's done watching lies become official history. Naturally, the biggest question keeps popping up everywhere. Why wasn't Gene Deal included in the documentary at all? Gene recently explained it in an interview, and his answer reveals everything. He says he was initially involved, sharing footage, stories, first-hand insight, until one conversation changed everything.
That conversation was with director Alex Stapleton, and according to Gene, she made it brutally clear that 50 Cent didn't control payments or final content decisions. When Gene heard the financial offer they put on the table, he felt completely disrespected, completely brushed aside. From his perspective, and I completely understand this, he brought exclusive footage and first-hand access to major moments in hip-hop history, moments that shaped an entire generation, moments that people have debated for 30 years. Yet the compensation didn't reflect that value at all, not even close. So he walked away.
I think that hate stemmed from wanting to be him, idolize him off, he idolized Tupac, because you got to realize when a woman looked at Tupac, they probably wanted him. Puff wasn't getting that type of fever from girls. You understand what I'm saying? Puff had to use his money. Puff had to use his position in order to get women. Now, I seen him with some bad joints, and I used to look at them like this, like, not on no hating shit, but like, you wouldn't be here if he wasn't puffed.
No arguments, no public drama, just a hard no. He refused to sell his truth for pocket change. But here's the twist that makes me believe there's more to this story. Gene now says money wasn't the only reason he was excluded. He claims massive evidence was deliberately removed, including details tied to the East Coast-West Coast conflict that would have changed everything. According to Gene, the documentary skipped key truths surrounding the death of bodyguard Jake Robles, and he claims Mark Curry knows far more than what was shown. This is where the narrative really starts falling apart, and it gets uncomfortable fast. Uncomfortable for people in power, people still operating in the industry today. Gene Deal says people keep pushing this idea that everything was some deep, mysterious government operation, but according to him, it wasn't that at all. He claims it was a street-level situation involving
me and my man Boom Dang, a.k.a. my man Slick, a check for $1 million. We don't know, and everybody trying to say, lie, talking about half of it got paid, $500. I don't know. I know when I asked him we asked him, no, we didn't ask him. I know when he showed us the check and he walked away after he showed us the check for the $1 million, you understand? I asked Boone, I said, yo, Boone, when did he get a record label? He said, you know how Zip is. I said, when did he get a Zip record label? Zip had a check for $1 million. He said he got it from Barry Hankerson and Jimmy Henchman for his record label, Black Ground Records. So now, if that's true, we know Jimmy Henchman and Puff was cool. You should be able to trace $1 million if that's the truth. If that's the truth, you should be able to trace
someone from the Bronx, and law enforcement later confirmed that individual was taken out of the picture during a separate incident at a venue called Magic City. But Gene also challenges the whole East Coast versus West Coast storyline that's been repeated in every documentary, every book, every podcast for decades. He says that framing is flat out wrong and way too broad. a convenient oversimplification.
Is basically saying the evidence is sitting right there if anyone wants to follow it.
Maybe you can help law enforcement on how, if Diddy had anything to do with breaking that money up or giving that money up to him like that. Or did he use somebody else? Or did he do something for somebody else to be able to get that money for that? We don't know.
I was just about to say that too. Keefe D, he can use him for the upcoming trial.
Well, Kirk was meticulous in always keeping notes and files and things like that. But that money can't, just do a trace on $1 million check. Just do a trace on them. I want them to do it because that would prove that I saw $1 million check. That would prove. Just do a trace on it. The man dead now. What you gonna do? Do a trace.
That hides the real culprits. According to him, this was never about regions, cities, or coastlines. It was strictly tension between Bad Boy Records and Death Row Records at the top level, specifically between the leaders, the money men, the puppet masters. Artists were still moving freely between coasts. East Coast mobbers were welcomed out west. West Coast artists were still pulling up in New York. The culture was solid overall.
The real friction, Gene says, lived strictly between Diddy and Suge Knight. And that part keeps getting glossed over, keeps getting buried. And here's something the documentary completely skipped, something that proves Gene's point about responsibility. Gene claims Death Row actually tried to calm things down. There were attempts to arrange a sit-down, a peace meeting to clear the air between Tupac and Biggie, to end the beef before it turned deadly. According to Gene, Diddy refused to attend and wouldn't send anyone from Bad Boy either. That detail, he says, never made the final cut of the Netflix documentary, and it changes everything. From Gene's point of view, and I have to agree with him here, this situation could have been diffused early, could have been stopped before anyone died. Instead, he believes decisions were made that allowed the tension to spiral, to grow, to become fatal. And that's why this part makes people uneasy to even talk about, why it got cut from the final documentary.
Now let's get into the most explosive claims, because this is where things really turn up, where Gene drops bombs that powerful people never wanted the public to hear. Gene Deal says there was advanced awareness of what was about to go down at Quad Studios in 1994, the shooting that changed everything, that started the chain of events leading to 2 deaths, and that certain people were closer to the planning than anyone wants to admit. The documentary mentions the Quad Studios incident, where Tupac was shot 5 times, but Gene says that most critical detail was deliberately left out, edited away, buried. He claims Diddy, Andre Harrell, and Jimmy Henchman were all together in Jimmy's office earlier that same day. Gene is crystal clear on one thing that still haunts him. Biggie and his circle didn't know Diddy was there at all. Diddy was expected to be upstairs at the studio session with Biggie, doing A&R work, being the mentor he claimed to be. But instead, Gene claims he stayed back in that office, watching things quietly, monitoring the situation. Why? Gene says it was about business, about control, about money and power. Diddy controlled Biggie's publishing, one of the most valuable assets in hip-hop, and Biggie was trying to restructure that deal, trying to take back control of his own work, his own legacy. Advisors were suggesting Biggie place his publishing under another name, maybe his wife, maybe Lil Cease, so he could secure his earnings directly, without Diddy's hand in the pot. According to Gene, Diddy was monitoring that situation extremely closely, watching his cash cow try to escape. And while he was in that office with Jimmy Henchman, Gene claims Jimmy hinted that Tupac was about to be confronted over a financial dispute. Gene says Tupac was supposed to show up to record a track with Little Sean and settle things professionally, but words had already been exchanged behind the scenes, and tensions were dangerously high. Gene insists that Diddy understood what was coming next, what was about to happen. And here's the detail that keeps people talking.
It seems strange. Could Puff have been involved in Tupac's murder or Biggie's murder?
I think that when you set up an atmosphere for something to happen, how involved are you? You set up the atmosphere. You put people in positions to get hurt. He knew that somebody was going to do something. He was told. I told him before we left. I told him. Mace told him. See, people ain't telling. See, everybody think that Gene Deal is the only one know this shit. I'm not the only one that's noticed and privy to this information. I'm the only one that's speaking on it and has spoke on it. Now, people are coming out gradually, but when Puff set up an atmosphere for somebody to get hurt and they get hurt, don't you take some responsibility for that?
Is that more tactics? He's not going to pull the trigger. He might not even pay someone to do so, but like releasing that song Who Shot You, that creates an atmosphere, creating certain things and planting seeds in somebody else's mind to be number one, where Tupac ends up getting killed, Biggie ends up being killed.
The detail that makes me believe Gene is telling the truth.
Gene says if Diddy didn't expect anything serious, if he truly didn't know violence was coming, he would have gone straight upstairs to Biggie's session. That's where he was supposed to be. That's where everyone expected him. Instead, Gene claims Diddy stayed put in that office, positioned perfectly to watch how the situation unfolded, to see if Tupac would show up, to witness the consequences without being directly involved. Gene stands on this completely, stakes his entire reputation on it. He says this isn't rumor talk, this isn't internet speculation. This is what he personally witnessed with his own eyes, and he believes the documentary avoided this part on purpose because it's too damning, too direct, too impossible to explain away.
This part hits different because Gene says the signs were there from the beginning and nobody in power spoke up. According to him, certain people had advanced awareness of what was about to unfold, not after the fact, not through rumors, but before it happened. Yet no warnings were given to Tupac, and no effort was made to slow things down, to de-escalate, to prevent bloodshed. The documentary skipped this entirely, but Gene also breaks down why the tension between Sean Diddy Combs and Tupac Shakur was so deep in the first place. And honestly, his explanation connects a lot of dots that people have missed for decades. Gene says it wasn't about music talent or chart success. Both were wildly successful. He claims it was personal, rooted in envy over natural presence, over something money can't buy. According to Gene, when Tupac entered a room, attention followed without effort. People were drawn to him automatically, magnetically. His energy, his charisma, his realness spoke before he ever opened his mouth. Women wanted him, men respected him. He commanded space naturally. Gene contrasts that with Diddy's situation, and this is brutal but honest. He claims Diddy relied heavily on status, money, and influence to get the same reaction. Gene recalls moments where he personally escorted women out afterward, thinking to himself that things would have looked very different without the fame, the cars, the jewelry, the industry power backing every interaction.
He even says Diddy once admitted it straight up, confessing, "I don't know how to talk to women." That confession stuck with Gene, haunted him, made him understand the resentment brewing underneath. Gene believes that frustration built over time like pressure in a sealed container. And according to him, that emotional rivalry, that jealousy, that envy, that inadequacy quietly fueled many later decisions, whether people want to admit it or not. When you can't compete naturally, you compete through power, through control, through elimination.
Gene's argument is simple but devastatingly powerful, and I think he's absolutely right about this. He says, if authorities ever wanted clarity, if they genuinely wanted to solve this case instead of letting it fade into cold case files, all they'd need to do is follow that check. This wasn't secret money moving quietly through underground channels. It was a documented transaction that had to pass through a legitimate bank system. Gene stresses there's a paper trail, signatures, account numbers, records, approvals, routing information, all logged somewhere in banking systems that never fully delete anything. He's basically saying the evidence isn't hidden at all, isn't buried in some secret vault. It's sitting in plain sight in banking records for anyone with subpoena power actually willing to look, actually willing to challenge powerful people. The real question hanging over everything is brutal and makes me angry every time I think about it. Will anyone ever look into it? Or will these records stay locked away, protected by power and connections like they have for nearly 3 decades? Now brace yourself, because this is where the story gets intensely emotional, intensely personal, and where Gene's testimony becomes absolutely haunting. Gene Deal says he was physically present the night the Notorious B.I.G. was lost, and the warnings he received beforehand don't match the clean, simple story most people believe, the story that's been sold to the public for 28 years. Before anyone even traveled to Los Angeles for that fateful trip, Gene says alarms were already going off, loud and clear. He received a call from a man named Ordell Pucci Faust, known on the street as Unique. This wasn't a random person, wasn't some internet conspiracy theorist. Gene says Unique was deeply connected in the streets, deeply respected, and was incarcerated in Colorado at the time. Despite being locked up, despite being monitored, Gene says Unique somehow got a message through, risked additional charges just to warn them. The call was short, urgent, terrifying, just 2 words that Gene will never forget. Vest up. Then the line went dead, cut off by prison monitoring systems.
Gene explains that when authorities detect three-way calls or unauthorized communications, they shut them down instantly. But those 2 words got through. 2 words that should have changed everything.
That's when things escalated to the breaking point. Gene says Diddy told him to get in the vehicle, and Gene pushed back hard, questioning why someone was trying to tell him how to do his job, how to protect people. According to Gene, Diddy responded with a direct threat that still haunts him. If he didn't get in the car, he wouldn't be working for Bad Boy anymore. His job, his livelihood, his reputation, all on the line in that moment. Gene got in the car, but he was furious, was screaming inside. He told the driver to move fast, to run red lights if necessary, to clear the area immediately because something felt catastrophically wrong. As they pulled away, Gene noticed something felt off, noticed the energy shift. Moments later, chaos erupted nearby. Gunshots, screaming, panic spreading instantly like wildfire. The driver hit the gas, trying to escape the scene, while Gene shouted in disbelief, questioning why they were moving away instead of turning back, instead of helping, instead of protecting Biggie. Eventually, the vehicle turned back, but by then, everything had already changed. By then, it was too late.
Now it's on you, and I genuinely want to hear your perspective. Drop your thoughts in the comments and be honest. Do you believe Gene Deal? Does his testimony sound credible to you, or do you think he's exaggerating for attention? Do you think key information was left out of the Netflix documentary on purpose, or was it just legal caution? Should 50 Cent have included Gene's testimony despite the risks, or was cutting it the right business decision? Where do you think this story goes next? Will authorities finally investigate the check, the paper trail, Kirk Burroughs' records, or will this fade back into conspiracy theory territory? Most importantly, do Tupac and Biggie deserve better than the official story we've been fed? Don't they deserve the complete truth, no matter who it implicates? If you rock with deep dives like this, if you believe in truth over protection of powerful people, make sure to smash that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel, share this video with everyone who needs to hear Gene's testimony, and keep this conversation going in the comments. The industry doesn't want you talking about this. Powerful people want this buried. Prove them wrong. Spread the truth. I'll catch you in the next one. Stay vigilant, stay questioning, and never let them silence the witnesses.